Hello, my name is Zach Rye with Old Man Gaming. Welcome to another Snap Judgment review. I think this will be my last one of 2025, and we're talking about an early front runner for me for Experience of the Year 2026. But before we get into that, we got to do the disclaimer thing. What is a Snap Judgment review if you've never listened? I think game reviewers nowadays get a little caught up in 100%ing or near completing games. So I do about 5 to 10 hours with the game. I'm trying to give you an idea whether you're going to enjoy it right away or not. That factor, coupled with the fact that I think games are one of the most subjective forms of art, I do not do scored to this review. Instead, I'm going to give you an overview of what the game is. I'm going to give you a list of the pros and the cons of this game in my point of view, and then I'm going to be telling you whether I personally will be sticking with the game or DLC outside the purposes of this content. So, disclaimers out of the way. This game is in heavy early access, and a plethora of bugs and other lack of content issues is not enough to keep this from being one of my favorite games that I have purchased this year, making it in just under the wire. I am talking about Nitro Gen Omega. What does Nitro Gen Omega mean? I have no idea. Maybe they'll explain when they add the actual storyline, main campaign content that they are planning to later in 2026. But for now, what Nitro Gen Omega is kind of a Sentai game. If you don't know what a Sentai is, it's not a hentai, that's the dirty kind. A Sentai series is a series where you have a bunch of people coming together as a team to pilot one giant robot to fight off different either monsters or other robots, stuff like that. That's kind of what this is, but kind of positioned in this weird kind of global apocalypse sort of area. I kind of got the feeling like it was Mad Max mixed with a little Voltron. What happens is you will procedurally generate, or you can go into a character creator that has its up and downs and make your own characters. A starting team of 4 androgynous anime characters. These characters come with names, their own proclivities, their own personalities, and all of that fun stuff. Then those 4 guys operate an airship and pilot a mech. Right now there are only 2 mechs in the game. I'm not quite sure how to unlock the second mech, but the first mech you start with is the Mankey, something like that. It's basically monkey spelled in a weird way. But what's interesting about this game, what this really gets down to, what's really kind of cool about it, is the combat in this. It is a cinematic, tactical combat game. What I mean by this is everything in the game is hand-drawn and animated. Not like normal animations or anything. Like, it looks like a TV show. You're seeing that from the footage on the show. And basically everything you do has like a little animated thing with it, and it'll do it with the specific character, mecha, or enemy that requires, which kind of puts it together like a show. What you end up doing with this combat is you have 2 phases. You have the planning phase, which is like these kind of like almost looks like an editing tree, and you can place your actions on your little bar in whatever order you want based on priority. So how fast that action is, and then you kind of take turns with the bad guys placing their things. So it's this kind of weird strategic card playing in the right place sort of situation. Then, once everybody's placed all their stuff, you go to the resolution phase, and it just plays out like a scene in the show, with missiles and shots and punches and all sorts of fun stuff. The system for actually doing this is very easy to understand, but very hard to master. Figuring out exactly like when things happen and how they happen, it turns into a very timing issue. A good descriptor of this would be you can shoot your cannon for your mech. It is an immediate action. It happens right when they do it. But the priority is slightly lower, so movements take place before it. However, the cannon just shoots at whoever it is, and doesn't matter what zone they're moved into. Or you can fire missiles. Now, missiles are interesting. They don't hit because they go up into the air. They don't hit for 2 segments. So, and when they hit, they destroy everything in the zone. And they heat seek the target that you made it. So you have to be careful not to fire the missiles at a target that's running at you, because then you get hit by the missiles. And I can tell you right now, I've blown myself up multiple times. And this is just one of the many different combinations of weapons and strategies you can kind of implement. As you get more parts for your mech, you get more options as what each of the 4 drivers can do. The 4 drivers, you have a actual driver. That person is responsible for guard, melee attacks, and moving the character from point A to point B. You have the gunner, who's responsible for all gunning. Then you have the engineer, who's responsible for some reloading, also deploying coolant to keep your mecha cool because it can overheat. And then you've got the operator, who has all sorts of different little tricks. They have the scan action, which they can scan what the other people are doing and what their attacks are looking like. They can also do a host of other things, such as deploy smoke grenades to help counter ranged attacks, deploy bombs, detonate those bombs, all sorts of interesting things. And that's what it really comes down to is... each of those 4 drivers can only really make one action. Where you place them, how you place them, makes it very, very, very interesting and strategic. So you have to kind of like, if you're trying to fire missiles, you can't use that gunner action until you know where the bad guys are moving. So you have to kind of almost pick your other actions first. But those other actions might be absolutely paramount to what you're trying to achieve. And it makes a really, really interesting game that ends up with a really, really interesting outcome. And we'll talk about all of that in the pros and the cons. Before we do that, we need to also talk about the non-combat stuff, which I find this just as interesting, if not a little bit bare bones at the time. Between each combat, you will be able to go to these cities, find contracts. You will also be able to take part in procedurally generated events that you can find just flying around. You can hire new drivers, and as your drivers combat, their fatigue will go up, and their mental stress will go down or up, depending on your success, or how much you're using them, or how well they're doing, or how much they're contributing. This is a really interesting factor because you also get these activity tokens in between the different missions, which allow you to take part in, again, pre-animated kind of fun activities. There's a DDR dance-off, there's a sparring session, there's weightlifting, yoga. What's interesting about this too is it will boost or hurt friendships. You can make people into close friends where they can actually support each other on the battlefield. You can make them into rivals where they will actually take the place of other characters. And their interpersonal relationship is very interesting. I will say it does not affect the game as much as it should, which we'll talk about later. But it is a really cool aspect, and it makes you feel very connected to the characters. A good example of this is one of my favorite characters in the beginning. This guy and another favorite character was a girl. They became close friends, and then it meant so much more because you watched them actually build their friendship when the girl decided to leave the group. Because in addition to these little things, you also get these randomly generated events that can boost friendship, have people leave your team, have people lose morale or gain morale depending on what's happening. It's a very simple system. It's bare bones at the time, but you can see a lot of potential for it. So, that being said, I think I've described the game about as well as I can. So let's go ahead and get into the pros and the cons. The pros. This battle system is absolutely phenomenal. I think that it is always interesting to me when somebody takes procedural generation and they take something of a different concept and they try and tell a story with it, and they merge that narrative storytelling with something kind of fresh and new and unique. And this game does that. The battle system is like nothing else I've ever played. And I have been playing video games for over 20 years. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. The fact that like you have this really tactical planning phase to go into this really awesome like animated kind of resolution of it is just really cool. Even with the fact that some of the actions and movements, they're one animation, so they can be a little redundant, it still kind of falls together in a way that's very pleasing to the eye. And it keeps me very invested, which dovetails right into my next pro, which is the feeling of accomplishment you get when a plan comes together is awesome in this game. When the music is bopping, which will be the next pro, and you have planned it perfectly so that somebody jumps in. Good example. I was fighting 2 melee-based characters. I had laid a bomb in a different area, so I jumped back to that area. The melee-based characters ran at me. I timed it perfectly so that I fired the missiles. My missiles jumped out of that area, detonated the bomb just as the missiles hit, and just showered them with explosions. It is a true fist-pumping motion to watch that be animated perfectly and brilliantly together, as if you're writing the anime. And I think that that's really, really cool. All right, my next thing is music. The music kicks ass in this game. I really enjoy it. They've put a lot of thought into it, which usually I will say, especially this is really early access, and we're going to talk a lot about that in the cons, but you wouldn't expect the music to be this good. The music actually shifts depending on the zone that your ship is flying through. Like, I noticed when I hit the desert area, it got a little bit more western, got a little bit more rock and roll. When it went back into the forest, I got a little bit more floaty, almost fantasy type music. The music also shifts on the battlefield with people breaking down and not breaking down. And you get these really, really cool moments with that music that and I'm sure that the battle music will get repetitive for me eventually. I'm only 5 hours in, but it's still, like, I hear it in my sleep. And that is a good thing for a soundtrack. Next, let's talk about the event system and some other cinematic moments. So again, the relationship, the player relationship stuff, you can see is very bare bones at this point. So as you do activities, it will lower characters' fatigues. You can also offset the fatigue by replacing them with other drivers for a mission or two, which is what I've been doing. I have about 8 drivers, and I just switch them out when they need to. You can also completely lose characters. They can die. They can actually completely die. They become wounded and then critically wounded. If they're critically wounded, you can't use them. And if they're wounded and they die, they're gone. They didn't make it. They're out. What's really interesting about this battle system, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm still on the events. The event system makes it so that you really, really feel these characters. I talked about this a little bit in the overview. You really feel the characters as your own. And that's something I've always loved. When you have a game like State of Decay 2, where you have these characters that are procedurally generated, it still feels a little disconnected. Like, these are just the lineup. These are the walking stats and skills that I'm using to get through this game. I can put those personas on them. I can use that imagination, but really, there isn't a lot of that narrative there. Whereas with this game, it's all narrative. You are feeling these characters. You're getting used to these characters. I have one character who fights with everybody. Starts fights, gets in arguments, but is incredibly good at filling different roles in the mech, so I can't get rid of him. I had another situation where, and I already told you earlier in the review about the one character and the girl who became close friends, and then the girl left. Well, then the other original girl, I had those two start to become close friends. They did become close friends, and then she died. And that was, like, hugely impactful for me as a player, because the game, with these events, with these activities, they make you feel attached to these procedurally generated characters, and that is a hard thing to do. I haven't felt this since Wildermyth. Like, that is the only thing that I can compare to this as far as, like, emotional connection to characters that are randomly generated. Yeah, which brings me to my final pro, which is the procedural generation on this, and the characters. You get attached to them. It tells this narrative beautifully with the way that they do things, and I don't think I've ever experienced that. You also, one thing about this battle system that I truly enjoy is the wound system and the damage system. Every time your mech takes damage, you will see one of the characters get kind of rattled, shaken, possibly killed. Because every time the mech takes damage, one of your characters takes damage. They either take mental damage or they take real damage, eventually killing them. Which is really cool. It makes it so that, yes, yes, you can take a lot of damage before your mech goes down, but taking that damage and running that line will cause bigger issues because X character will pass out, and then you can't use any of the mech's abilities from that area, or X character will get killed, and even though you win the battle, they're dead. You also have this really interesting moments of, like, if the character's morale is really good, they can get these things called instinct guards and limit breaks. I have not seen a limit break yet, but an instinct guard is like your character just like steps in and helps survive an attack out of desperation because the morale is so good. You can also have these breakdown moments where your character gets so stressed they just have a mental breakdown and they can't deal with what's going on around them, and it's just like losing them. I think that, like, that kind of stuff is really cool. It really attaches to your character, and that's why this game is second to none right now for me. But we do have to talk about the cons. Listen, I want to say this at the top because I don't feel like a lot of these cons I feel like are going to be fixed as the game goes on. But I got to talk about them because this is really super early access. And if you look at the roadmaps, they're obviously fixing things, they're changing things, but there is a lot of stuff that you want in this game that you're not going to get because it's early access at this moment in time. So just keep that in mind. It's early access. A lot of this stuff is covered by the roadmap. Like lack of mecha choice. There's one mech. There's another mech in the game that I've found. It costs 800 marbles, which is the currency of the game. But it won't let me buy it even though I have it. So I don't even know if that's actually usable. And then there's supposedly a third mech coming later on in 2026. And then they're also making it so that you can pick what mech you start with. I think this game really needs that. Right now, you have this lack of mecha choice. You're just in the Mankey. And if you don't like the Mankey, tough shit. And the rest of the game makes up for it, but I would like a couple other different designs and ideas. Even potentially like a procedural generation for the mech. I think that would be really cool. I don't know how they would do that, but at the same time, I don't know how they do it with the characters. Alright, next, the character creator. Okay, this is in the cons because it is really confusing and hard to deal with. I love that the character creator is here. I love that, like, you can create characters and then you can put those characters into the game. You can replace your 4 procedurally generated characters with your created characters. That's cool. The problem I have with this is they have a lot of options, but they don't clearly define how you switch or where the colors go. There was a whole moment where, like, I had a character with glasses and a hat, and I wanted them to have the hat but not the glasses, and I couldn't make that happen. In fact, I'm pretty sure the glasses and the hat were a hair option. So, like, I feel like the character creator is amazing. There's a lot of options here, but it is really hard to utilize it appropriately to really get what you want out of it. And you end up with basically procedurally generated characters that you procedurally generated. Excuse me. Okay, this one is nitpicky. I'm pretty sure they will eventually fix this, but some of the activity sounds just aren't here, and it's very jarring. So one of the activities that you will use a lot is having a jam session by yourself with a bass guitar. You can just have your character play a bass guitar, and it gives them a bunch of morale. It's a great activity to do. I don't know why every mecha pilot in the entire planet is a bass guitarist, but whatever. That being said, there is no bass guitar riff track with this. You just see them playing it, and they do like a couple of grunts, like but it's so jarring to not have the bass guitar musical track there. It is very strange. There's a couple of other activities that are like that, where it's like there should be a noise here, but there isn't. The DDR one is the most glaring. You have this Dance Dance Revolution one, where the two people have like a dance off on Dance Dance Revolution, but you just hear their footsteps like stepping around and their grunts. You don't hear the DDR or whatever techno version would be. So it's just like it's just so jarring to see that and not hear any music or sound effects with those two things. So yeah, those need to get fixed. And then finally, I think that there are a ton of bugs here. There's just a ton of bugs here. And just be aware if you're going to purchase this. I ran into a bunch of invisible walls while flying around on the map. I didn't see any bugs to the combat. You can see that the combat is much more like their focus of this game, but I definitely ran into a lot of bugs on the overworld. Just invisible walls that I would run into and just be stuck like over water, stuff like that. Just keep that in mind. But that's early access stuff, it's early access stuff. And then the last thing I do want to mention, I was going to mention this as a con. I don't think it's a con. Now that I'm thinking about it, is there is no way to take your actions back in the planning phase. So when you're planning your combat, once you have hit that confirm and put it on your kind of time bar, it's there. You cannot go back and get rid of it, even if you realize you made a terrible mistake and you're going to shoot yourself with missiles. That is rough. Most games, like tactically like this, don't make you do that. Like, don't make you go with your selection until you've selected everything. But this one, if you make a selection, it's your selection. So you have, and I was going to put this on the con because I found it very frustrating. But at the same time, I think that's where the difficulty of this comes from. I think that's where the challenge comes from, and I think it needs to be there. You have to make those split-second decisions, and you have to make those decisions in the moment. Like, do I waste this action over here with this character so that I can see more actions from the bad guys? Do I go for it here? What are they going to do here? And that's really what this game is about. It's about knowing your enemy types and trying to predict them. And that is really interesting. And if you don't have that like split second thing, I think the game becomes too easy. The game is not easy. It is not easy. It will feel easy sometimes. You'll be rip-roaring through something, and then all of a sudden you'll bite up more than you can chew with some sort of giant gorilla monster and troll monster that just whoop you into oblivion, and then all of a sudden somebody's dead and everybody's morale is crap and your fuel's gone. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy that, like, I'll be doing good and then tragedy will strike. And that's really cool about this game. And whether or not I'm going to stick with it, yes. In fact, it's already on my list for Experience of the Year. It'll probably get booted. Let's face it, we're pretty early for 2026. But it's there, and I really enjoy this. I cannot wait to see what they add with this roadmap, and I can't wait to see what this game looks like at actual release. It is, without a doubt, one of the best $18 I've spent on Steam in 2025, and I am very much looking forward to repeatedly coming back to this game. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? You guys can let me know in the comments below. You can also join our Discord. The link is in the description below. Influence us in all of our shows from there. I got one more review. I think it'll be the first one of 2026. I'm working on the Palia review. And so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure this has already happened after Christmas. So Happy New Year. And let's all hope that 2026 is great. As long as you guys keep watching and listening, I'll keep making them.